digitaljamsessions.com.
Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam session. Today we are joined once again by Liam from Rift Group, and we also have with us the team from Very Real. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
So what I'd like you to do, first of all, is just explain very, very briefly what it is you do for the benefit of our listeners. I'm going to ask you to do this first, Liam, just because I know that we've had this problem before where when you say Rift, everybody assumes it's Oculus Rift,
Exactly.
and it's not. So, care to explain?
So I work for a company called Rift Group. We are a tax specialist and I deal with the business development side of research and development tax and video games tax relief.
And you also do other types of funding as well.
Also, I have connections to finance and funding and such things like that.
He's the money people. Okay, and on this side of the room, we've got the team from Very Real. Who wants to start out for you two?
We could talk in unison. Hi there, yeah. So this is Ed, and this is my colleague Jack, and we run a business called Very Real, and we are specialist recruiters for the immersive tech industry, as well as sort of enabling and doing business development on behalf of SMEs within the sector that need some new projects.
Yeah, well, as Tanya likes to call us, the matchmakers of the industry, which we're definitely stealing that because it does sound good.
It's the thing, it's the thing. Right, in advance, I'm going to apologise to anybody who's watching this who has mild bladder problems. I'm aware that there's a fountain in the background, and that's what you can hear trickling is a fountain. So if it makes you desperately need to go to the bathroom, I apologise in advance.
Pause tape.
What I wanted to do today, since I've got you three here with me, is talk about how one gets into these industries, because it's one of those questions I get asked an awful lot when I'm at an event and people come up and they're like, I'm in an existing industry. I'm not quite sure how I get into the VR industry. You know, what do I do? Who do I talk to? What skills should I, redirect in a slightly different direction, etc. and so forth. And so I wanted to start with kind of the obvious question, which is, how did you guys get into this?
Good question.
I think we're both quite similar in the sense that we call ourselves like 90s kids gamers, and I guess we kind of spawned from playing a lot of video games and just always been watching tech and what's emerging. And I think VR and AR just kind of captured our imaginations quite a lot. And our background is like working with web and mobile teams, like building like startups, build their development teams basically. And we just wanted to get involved in something that was we had a bit more passion about. It's hard to get excited about building a website after so many years. So VR and AR, when you can actually like try it out and you can give it to someone and see their face the first time they use it, is just a lot more inspiring, I guess, and just a bit more about us. Yeah.
And I think the community now it's at that very sort of exciting phase where we go around and we see first glimpse at some awesome tech that's being made at the moment. And there are some really great sort of small development teams in London and the UK that are developing some awesome content. So we love what we do.
Yeah, we say as well, it's like we always said it would be cool to be like back in the 80s dealing with the first developers and the Bill
pioneers.
Gates. Exactly, yeah. So we feel like we're meeting all these, awesome. The next Bill Gates, the next Steve Jobs, hopefully, and we'll be their best mates in a couple of years. So.
Okay, so being pioneers on the front edge. Before I ask him about how he got into this, I just want to throw in this personal bugbear. Just because you mentioned about getting to try stuff while it's at early beta stage, all that kind of thing. Two things. First of all, for the love of whatever deity you happen to be in love with, please do not ask people to put on an experience onto their noggin that is not complete. I know that in the games industry, we love this thing about, minimum viable product is fine, we'll just spin it up, it'll be fine. Not with VR. If the code isn't complete, if it's not right, you will just make people sick. Please stop doing it, because the amount of times I've had to put something on my head that is incomplete, or the code is wonky, or whatever the thing is, and it's made me violently ill, I can't even begin to tell you.
Agreed.
So please don't force me to put things on my head that aren't complete. Second of all, and this is just another personal bugbear of mine, and I'm just going to rant about this because I can, is events and conferences and all these places where people have demo kits and they want you to put something on your face so that you can try it out. For the love of God, clean the headset. Please. A guard, face mask, I don't care. Just please. If I have to cut out a blindfold head mask thing myself, I will do it. But please don't ask me to put a sticky, grimy, nasty headset on that's had hundreds of people's heads in it.
I think it's
just gross.
Agreed.
Yeah, Agreed. I have had it where they've actually left the face wipe in there and I've put it on. I don't go too far, but I'm with you on that.
Experience. Can't see anything through this headset.
Yeah. So, just saying, as a tip, as a valuable tip. But Liam, why don't you tell us about how you got into the industry?
So I suppose I come from a similar ilk, really. I was born in 1986. I was there, the boom period of Nintendo, I suppose. Grew up with a controller in my hand and kind of passion for the business. So when I got to a certain age, I won't divulge what age it was, but I set up my own limited company surrounding esports. And I was very much the networker out of myself and my business partner. So I would go and talk to developers, small independent studios and such things like that, looking to honestly benefit each way in a relationship. From there, I pretty much picked up a job with Rift due to a sales background that I had at the time. And they realised that I had experience within the industry and they were interested in venturing out into video games tax relief. Mm-hmm. So they were pretty much picked me to become their business development lead.
Awesomeness. And I know it's just because you're fiddling with it that I should also say congratulations, newly married man.
Yes. It still feels really weird at being there, to be fair. That's why it keeps getting spun around on my finger.
But okay, so we've talked about how we first got into this, and one of the common themes I'm hearing here is that you're kids of the 80s and the 90s, and you have this desire to be involved in something while it's still at that early germination and that early kind of growth period as such. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to throw back to one of my other bugbears. I sound so grumpy. I've got so many.
This is coming from a rant podcast, isn't it?
I've just got a lot of bugbears, people. I've just got a lot of things that really annoy me. Now, one of the things that I think is worth mentioning, just because, again, there's a lot of people who come into this and they're like, oh, we're coming into the VR industry brand new and we're just going to invent this cool new thing that nobody's ever seen before and it's the first whatever. And the amount of people that say, it's the first whatever in VR. And it's like, actually, guys, no. It's been around for 30 years as an industry. Yeah. People have been doing this for an awfully long time. And they know their shit. And they've already invented the wheel and reinvented the wheel a few, 100 times. Yeah. You don't need to reinvent the wheel for them. And so I am kind of curious from your perspective of this kind of connection between the people who've been doing it for a long time and the people who are coming into this new. I mean, I'm part of many, many different Facebook groups. And I saw one rant on Facebook about somebody was saying about how due to various products, I'm not going to name product names, but due to various things, there was a particular thing and they just had this little rant about how everybody was really obsessed with entertainment VR and didn't we all know we were doomed and, the VR hype was over and all this and that. It's kind of, it took me a lot to kind of be polite about it and just gently nudge and kind of go, just as a reminder, there is other application for VR in non-entertainment sectors.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I think, and you're a great advocate of this at events, and but as you know better than I do, the military have been using this and synthetic environments for 30 years. Yeah. So no, we share the same bugbear, and I think you have to use the terminology slightly loosely when you say this is a new thing, because people use said all the time actually.
Yeah. I think Renaissance in VR is quite a nice way of putting it. It's like the latest surge, but
But I think that the most exciting thing is that there are a lot of very innovative people working on some pretty kick-ass stuff, and it's just a question of once they've ironed out all of that and once all the beta stuff is really thoroughly done, and I think it's kind of a very collaborative atmosphere, unlike something like mobile or web, that although there are some amazing apps out there at the moment, there's some real buzz and there's some real passion for what people do, which I think is quite refreshing.
There's also that open collaboration, I suppose, as well, of people who want to work with each other because they're all trying to learn. They're all trying to figure this thing out. It's just like nobody can be the expert in this thing because it's still very early for a lot of people when it comes to certainly entertainment VR. It's still very early stages. So I'm not sure, Liam, if you've kind of had that kind of...
I see the whole argument of I'm the first person to do something brand new constantly with R&D tax credits. The best thing I can always say to someone that always says, I'm the first person to do something new, it's like, you're not the first person to do something new. You may be the first person to improve on what that is, but it's not brand new tech. You're just improving upon tech and making it better. And that's absolutely fine because you're the first person to do that. But there'll always be someone after you improving it as well. Yeah.
It's actually worth, as a note, that, Google is your friend.
Yes.
Double check if anybody's done it before. And if you're really, especially when it comes to research, Google Scholar. The amount of people who do not know about Google Scholar shocks me. Yeah. So just use Google, ironically enough, to search for Google Scholar. You'll find Google Scholar. It's another search engine. And basically, when you put something in there, it shows you the results that it brings back. Is basically all of the research, all of the white papers that have been published on that particular theme, topic, or whatever the thing is that you typed in. So if you do that, all these people who say, oh, there's no research, I can't find proof of this, or I can't find evidence. It's like, seriously, just go and Google Scholar it, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of white papers that already exist around this stuff.
Exactly.
So I feel like I'm ranting today. This is a real rant.
Just educational.
Educational ranting.
But I do feel that this is also an ideal opportunity to, you mentioned briefly about the military, and you're absolutely right. The word that they use is synthetic. They talk about synthetic rap or synthetic immersion or synthetic training, and what that really means is, immersive technologies or VR. Yeah. So they've been doing that for quite some time. But I think it's worth talking about automotive because, gentlemen, you might want to talk a little bit more about VR Drive. So why don't you explain exactly what VR Drive is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently partnered with Tanya's team at Digital Jam, as well as the DETC, and we held our inaugural event on Friday, where we had, and I think, the question about maybe getting people into the industry stems from going to events, and especially if you can get to a great event surrounded by similarly minded people looking to get into automotive. And we had people from gaming backgrounds there and more commercial, sort of architectural and B2B and even healthcare that were there. But yeah, if you're interested in getting into something, in VR full stop, it's about getting to the pub, meeting people informally initially, sounding people out, figuring out what people are working on, and hopefully having a great night. But yeah, we had 150 people there, 100 people there, which is...
Yeah, saw all sorts of great sort of initial chats going on. It was all very informal, not like a sort of interview process or anything, but just people just speaking about what they love and how they see this all going, and you can just kind of see stuff starting to emerge, relationships that are going to hopefully bring out the next cool thing. But really good. And that's going to be monthly probably now.
Monthly. So we've got, the next one is on August the 25th. Yes, there you go. So the last Friday of every month that will be happening. And in fact, next month we will be talking more automotive, and the DTC will be more involved, and they'll be sponsoring the event. So
and
kudos
it's a hub
to those
with loads of games all over it. So
there's no such thing as an awkward conversation when you've got a game of Tekken to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm there.
So just for the record, because I whipped you at Tekken, I'm just gonna.
You did.
I'm just going to clarify. So it happens at the loading bar in Stratford, the one called Secret Weapon on 25 West Ham Lane. And also that the DENTC, for those who don't know what that means, because we throw around a lot of acronyms, is the Digital Engineering and Test Centre based in Stratford. So thank you, gentlemen, for explaining that one. But what I want to do now is I want to talk about tips for people who are wanting to get into the VR industry, because there's a lot of people who are like, well, I'm a theatre director, or I'm a games coder, I should be able to get into this, and then they kind of look very blankly at people when they say, okay, how are you going to pitch for a job? So I'm kind of curious as to what your best tip is for somebody who's thinking about stepping out of their existing industry and shifting into VR, whatever that previous industry was. What would be the first tip? And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, Liam, because you've already done this. You've already done that little kind of shift slightly to the left.
For me, it would be, and the best piece of advice I can ever give anyone would be to network. And that is to find as many people that you can lean upon for information or advice, if it's from veterans or complete newbies to the industry. And just really lean upon them, because if you don't know someone, they may know somebody else that may be able to help you get into the industry that you want to be in, or the sector you want to be in. There are so many, especially in VR, so many events out there where you can meet so many different like-minded people, where you can just pass ideas around and just get an understanding of where you want to be within the industry. It's the best piece of advice is network.
Okay, so one question I'm going to ask to follow that up before I come back to the guys over here is, in terms of networking, here's the thing, is literally with VR, there is an event every single night of the week.
There really is. Yeah.
There really is an event every single night of the week. How do we decide what events are actually valuable and what events aren't? Because, I say this because the key to networking is about who you know. And sometimes you can, walk into an event and it's great because everybody knows everybody else and they're all introducing each other and there's lots of collaboration. And in other events, you can walk in and it's like everybody's just kind of keeping to themselves. Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious. So from your perspective, how do you drill it down to what's useful and what's not?
Research mostly. So yeah, I would always look over the guest list if it's available. I'd also ask the people that I know within the industry if they have previously attended, if they know anyone that's there that they'd like to introduce, or likewise I'd like to introduce them to. And that's what I would do, is mostly your research and ask your network of people if it's worth going to.
Okay. It's probably worth also noting that there are very different types of event going on, where some of them it's just about having a drink and having a chat, others it's about kind of sitting down and learning and having, you know, a lecture and panels and all that kind of thing.
And I think the danger actually sometimes with these events is, and there's very often some really great content out there, and you might find you're speaking to suddenly the technical director or someone in charge of hiring and that kind of thing. But I think often when you go to those events, you know, you're dealing with perhaps not the right point of contact for getting a job at the business, which is inevitable because, you know, it's not designed to get everyone a new job necessarily. So I think just pick and choose your moments, and I think, you know, if you have to play if once you've done your research, if you have to play, you know, a numbers game, I think you just got to go and meet as many people as you can at these things. And I think that's what, you know, Tanya's so great at, as well as her team at Digital Jam. And Liam, I know we met actually at an event 6 months ago. Yeah. So I think, you know, you've just got to shove people in the room and, you know, get talking.
Yeah, definitely. And then back to like a tip, kind of building upon that. I think this came up in your meetup, Tanya, when we were talking about hiring. Is a great tip is, because VR and AR, again, not new, but this latest kind of surge is, you know, coming out. There's not like kind of experts, like no one really knows what it is yet. So if you can go out there and make something and put it in front of the right people, you know, you might actually be able to create something that's better than people out there. So it's not, everything's not kind of set in place, like what the right way of using VR is or AR. So just kind of go for it, really. Put something together.
Minimum viable product.
Exactly.
Spin that thing up. And it's actually interesting you say that, because first of all, I think the VR industry is very like the games industry in that respect, in as much as, you know, you can just be a 1 or a 2-man team in a bedroom, throw something together, and you know, if it's good, then people will talk to you. But also in terms of the mentality and the approach to the industry, which is that anybody can kind of have a business within the industry. And one of the great examples of this kind of in action, so to speak, in terms of how to acquire a job in an industry, is Jess Hyder over at Epic Games for Unreal. And, you know, she built a game. She went to one of these game jams. She built a game. The game did the game did really well. It got published, and she went out to, I forget where it was, like GDC or whatever it was, and, you know, she got invited up to some party or whatever, and at that party happened to be the team from Unreal. And, you know, they were all chatting to her about her game, and, you know, a couple of months down the line, you know, they offered her a job as a community you know, dev person. Amazing. So, you know, that's how these things work. It is a case of, you know, if you've got proof and evidence to quantify what your skill set is, it makes it so much easier for somebody to be able to kind of figure out where they can place you or what they should be talking to you about.
What started all that as well must have been from drive and passion as well. And if that comes through, people will see that in you and give you the opportunity. That is exactly where that comes from.
Okay. So talking about kind of opportunities for people and where to kind of step into things, and we talked a lot about going to events and networking. Not counting any of my events. What events would you, off the top of your head, would you recommend that they go to?
Difficult, because it depends on the sector. Very much depends on the sector. If you really want to cover all bases, I suppose VR AR world is one of the ones, because it covers so many different sectors. But then you are going to have the problem of saturation. There is going to be too much there. That
definitely, it's very intense experience.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, I know I'm cheating because this is your event, but no, I think, you know, to the crowd that every month, it's I think the biggest meetup group in the world, or Europe certainly. Augmenting reality that Digital Jam hosts and Tanya hosts, along with the VR AR Association and Steve Dan.
Yes.
They do a great job every month with getting some great speakers in. And during those events, there are new faces all the time, and there's a massive turnout every month. And on Wednesday night, UCL, I think it's the best place to be.
That was cheating.
That was cheating.
I mean, you probably meant this as well, but I'd have to say the VR Drive event on end of the month every Friday.
That's still
plugging that again, but
still cheating.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, really. I mean, there's nothing that touches your event, Tanya. That's the problem.
I think there's a lot that is way better than ours.
In your opinion, Tanya, which events did spring to mind? I know Liam mentioned a very respectable event that I think we might have met at, actually.
Yeah, I mean, VR AR World is great. It's run by Inform. It's very big. There's a lot going on. You've got App World as part of the same show. But I mean, if you're talking about kind of being able to connect with people within the industry, things like VR World Congress and the VR show, which again was great showcase of different types of industry verticals who were applying VR. But again, I'm cheating because it's kind of our show as well. But technically it's not my show. But there are a lot of people who are doing meetups, and then there are a lot of people who are doing actual shows and exhibitions. And of course, if we're going to talk about meetups, then we have to talk about VRLO, which is run by the team over at Rewind. And that's very much the heart of the creative agency community, so to speak. So if you're wanting to talk to people in that respect, that's definitely the place to be. But if you're talking more to the kind of gamery type of audience, then VR World Congress is where you want to be. And I could sit and do this all day. There's a lot of different events to go to. Okay, so having said all of that, what are the groups or the trade bodies or the kind of organisations that you recommend people try and touch base with as they're trying to enter into this kind of industry?
We obviously have the two big ones within gaming, which is obviously Yuki and Tiger. We work.
You say Tiger, I say Tiger.
Yeah, see, this is it. I only say Tiger because they have a tiger in the logo.
Yeah.
So I suppose I've made it that way. We work with Yuki personally, so we network with them quite a lot, and they are quite influential to government and such things like that within Congress. They're probably the two biggest ones within gaming to go for.
Difficult to say. I mean, there aren't that many people that do what we do.
VR and AR, there's not really.
There's not a huge amount of there's not really a huge amount of businesses that are actively getting out there trying to find people jobs in VR. I know there are a few, but I would be mad if I didn't mention Very Real. Say hello. But no, and listen, I think as Liam touched upon earlier, it's the more proactive you are, the more opportunities you'll find online and places to people to be in networks, and I think it's a matter of time before the community just becomes bigger and bigger, exponentially over the next few years.
It's not just even like in person as well. Social media presence is huge, absolutely huge. Get your LinkedIn up to date. Make sure you social network on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Do you know
so
what?
much.
I will say that Facebook is the place to be
Yeah.
for the VR community.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of Facebook groups, and it was really funny because I was keeping it down to like 3 or 4 groups to start off with, and even within those 3 or 4 groups, you're talking about maybe 10,000 members all in.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why, but the other day I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to see if there's any other VR groups I should join. And obviously at the time when I first joined those groups, there wasn't that many. I was like, I literally was already in the biggest ones at the time. I did it again, and it's like so many Facebook groups. It was ridiculous. So I added a couple of those, and suddenly now those groups of the groups that I'm part of, you're talking easily 500,000 people that are part of this community. So, and they're very active. They're very engaged. They're talking. They're throwing ideas around. They're collaborating, and so Facebook is a great place to be if you want to kind of get involved in the industry as well.
And I think as when development is actually relatively easy. I mean, I'm not calling it straightforward by any means, but if you have an understanding of how to develop in C or C#, C++, whatever it might be, with Apple's new AR kit. I mean, there are tools available that you can use and actually come up to speed with fairly quickly to develop something that on the outset might look a bit like a rusty demo, but a few iterations of that, you might have a very full scale working demo. And again, as Tanya, you just mentioned, everyone's willing to collaborate, so there's no wrong way or right way to do things. So post it, see what response you get, tweak it, post it again, more response. So
Twitter's amazing for that as well. The amount of I always go back to gaming because it's where obviously my passion comes from mostly, but the amount of indie developers that I see post bits on Twitter and send them directly to publishers or put them on publishers' pages and things like that. It's like, what do you think of my work? It's an amazing tool, and it's free. It's free to do.
And of course, there's game jams and hackathons. Just getting in there and rolling up your sleeves and wading in and just making something.
And it's a great way to meet people again as well.
Yeah.
Because you're working in teams that you may not ever work with before.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think that there's definitely a lot of different ways that people can kind of engage with these communities. And I think that it's worth perhaps talking about identity and how to project oneself to these hiring organisations, which is kind of a lot of what you guys get to see is how people are projecting themselves. What would you say are the common mistakes that you're seeing from people?
Don't let your heart rule your head. That is the biggest thing. Great people are passionate, and they should be passionate. That's 100%. But be sensible, be professional. If someone says that they don't like your work, don't get upset about it. Take the criticism and change what you've done and make it better. That's the best thing to be. The best thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's going back to showing your passion by if you can't get a starting job in VR or AR, then you've got to show that you've been working on stuff in your own time. And it's all well and good to say, I haven't been able to get a role because I haven't had the experience. You don't need to have a job to show the experience, essentially. So you need to be able to show your passion with personal projects.
And I think if you can highlight the transferable skills, and you know, as you said, Tanya, that you might not have any tech experience whatsoever, but you might have an immersive theatre type background, or you know, even those experiences, you just make sure you highlight the right bits. And you know, we've seen it for 7 years or 8 years working in tech, that you'll find that the best developers sometimes might not actually kind of shove the right piece of information under the right nose at the right time. So, you know, just highlight the bits that you really feel passionate about and that you think that might be applicable to the VR industry. And it just means that when a hiring manager or a company stumble across your profile, they look at it and go, yeah, do you know what, I'm up for a coffee with this person, rather than I'm going to go and do some digging and find out a bit more.
Yeah,
they don't have time.
It's definitely more open. Like I remember working with companies, other tech companies in web and mobile, for example. I won't name names, but where you had to have a degree from like a university in this bracket and that sort of thing, or this maths A level. But we never get that in the companies we work with now. They're just based on passion, personality, and what you can show basically. So
proof that you can do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that it's kind of worth noting as well, though, for a lot of people, we're talking about how to get into VR, and for some people, their understanding of VR is going to be like hardcore AAA game studio type VR, and it's like, let's just remember there is a spectrum of VR, and whilst there are some people who are purists and who will argue the case that 360 is not VR, I'm going to say that if you want to get into immersive tech, irrespective, 360 is definitely worth looking at, and that there are so many different skill sets, so many different industry verticals that have applicable knowledge, whether that is from the theatre industry or even planetariums, for crying out loud, have something interesting to contribute to those conversations. So I think it's worth just remembering that it's not just about VR, it's about AR, it's about mixed reality, it's about any kind of hybrid experience. It's about immersion in technology, and that's why we keep calling it immersive tech rather than VR, AR, XR, or whatever bloody R you want to put, alphabet soup wise. But Liam, do you have any other last thoughts on this?
It really is, like I say, just get out there and stomp the pavement and get out there and talk to people. Just do it. The passion will show through.
And in fact, even at the to plug it for a third time, the VR Drive event last week, we meet people that would come with ideas, and all they were looking for was either an idea of some sort of commercial business acumen that they didn't quite have. Maybe they were an artist or a developer that had this great idea, but they just need to be shoved into the same room at the same time with someone that can help them out. So as you said, there's no right way or wrong way of developing anything at the moment. And if you're a creative and you need some business acumen, there are people out there waiting to meet you, trust me. Or there are people looking to help with funding. So I think it's a very exciting time to be involved.
Yeah, definitely. And if the other thing I'd add is maybe if you're in an industry where you don't think immersive tech has even touched upon it yet, maybe have a think about how you could bring it into your current industry. Like even if you work in say finance, there's ways that immersive tech's going to change that. So don't think that you're in a completely unrelated field, because it's likely that it is eventually going to change.
And think partnerships, suggest to your manager, you know what, I think I've thought about doing something with immersive tech, and although I might not be the person that can develop the whole damn thing, there's a company down the road, there are 3 developers that maybe we could meet and we could get them in and we can collaborate like that. So think partnerships as well, guys.
Yeah. And also, just for the record, if you think that your industry hasn't already dabbled in immersive tech, likelihood is actually they probably have, and
I was trying to think of one that hasn't.
It would be really good to gravitate towards those people who are already dabbling, because you're at the beginning of that road with those people who are dabbling. So go find the people who are already dabbling, because they do exist. But okay, so having said all of that, as always, we like to give our listeners a way to be able to find out a little bit more about you and harass you for funding or jobs, whichever it may be. So we asked you to do that by sharing with us your social media handle of choice. What would that be?
So mine would be at RiftBDM or at GamingTax on Twitter.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's at VeryRealVR, or say hello at veryreal.io.
Yeah, same one. I mean, I could give my personal one, but it's mainly craft beer.
I think we'll get the same. So get in touch, guys.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review, and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. Thinking of starting your own podcast? Why not speak to the GL Pro UK team? They handle all of our podcasting service needs. Tell them that Digital Jam Session sent you and you'll get 10% off your first order. Find out more at www.glpro.co.uk. DigitalJamSessions.com